The noise of dishes filled the air as I loaded another rack into the Hobart. The big dishwasher started up, drowning out the sound of the busy kitchen behind me. I barely noticed the noise anymore. After 15 years in this job, it had become just background noise, a reminder of how plain my life had become. My name is Andre Lagravanès. I'm 53 years old, and this is what I do. I wash dishes. It's not exciting, but it's honest work. I've never been one for big dreams. I've always been okay with simple things, a place to live, food to eat, and the feeling of doing a job well. But sometimes when it's quiet and there's just the sound of soapy water, I can't help but wonder about the life I could have had if I'd made different choices, taken a few more risks. As I unloaded some wine glasses, something caught my eye, a bit of metal between two plates. I reached for it, thinking it was a fork or something, but it turned out to be a bracelet. Silver links with a small nameplate. I looked at the engraving, Sarah, 1742 Sycamore Lane. I knew I should put it in the lost and found. That would be the right thing to do. But I've seen the waitresses go through that box, taking anything worth money. This bracelet wouldn't last a day there. As I thought about what to do, I remembered something. Sarah, I've seen her before, a young woman, maybe in her early 30s. She comes to the restaurant every few weeks, always alone, always sitting at the same table by the window. I noticed her the first time she came in, not because she was especially pretty, but because she looked so sad. I remember her wearing this bracelet. She would sit for hours, slowly drinking one glass of wine, hardly eating. Sometimes she'd look out the window. Sometimes she'd write in a notebook, but always alone. I remembered seeing her wear this bracelet. Last time she was here, about a week ago, she kept touching it, like it was bothering her wrist. I made a decision then, one that would change my life in ways I couldn't imagine. I put the bracelet in my pocket. I'd return it to her myself. I told myself it was the right thing to do. But deep down, I knew there was more to it. Maybe I just wanted to do something good, to feel like I mattered. Or maybe it was because in some way I saw myself in Sarah's loneliness. The rest of my shift seemed to take forever. For the first time in years, I felt something other than just feeling numb. Was it excitement, worry? I wasn't sure, but it was something, and that alone made my heart beat faster. As I hung up my apron and clocked out, I felt the weight of the bracelet in my pocket. 1742 Sycamore Lane. I knew where that street was, not far from here. A few hours' walk, something to clear my mind. Before I could talk myself out of it, I was out the back door and into the cool night air. The streets were quiet at this time. My footsteps echoed as I walked. As I went along, my mind wandered, thinking about the past and maybe a future I'd given up on long ago. I thought about the one that broke my heart. Nancy from when I was young, Nancy Laporte, with her nice smile and kind eyes. I wondered where she was now, what kind of life she had. Was she happy? Did she marry that guy from the basketball team, have kids and a house in the suburbs? Or did life throw her some curves too, mess up her plans like it did mine? Then I thought about this Sarah, the woman whose bracelet was in my pocket. I didn't know her last name, didn't know anything about her really except for the sadness I'd seen in her eyes. But as I walked, I found myself making up stories, silly daydreams that I thought I'd grown out of decades ago. I imagined giving her back the bracelet, seeing her face light up with thanks. I imagined us talking easily, finding out we had things in common. I imagined her laughing at my jokes, looking at me the way Nancy never did. I imagined a first date, awkward but full of hope. I imagined a life together, holidays, lazy Sunday mornings, the comfortable quiet of a shared life. It was silly, I knew. I'm a 53-year-old dishwasher with nothing to offer but a lifetime of regrets. She's young, probably pretty, with her whole life ahead of her. What could she possibly see in someone like me? But still, I kept imagining as I walked, because maybe, just maybe, this was the universe giving me another chance. Maybe this was my chance to be brave, to take a risk, to try for happiness, instead of letting it pass me by. With each step, I felt the weight of my past. Every missed chance, every road not taken, every time I was too afraid to act. But for the first time in years, I also felt something else. Hope. A small, fragile thing, but hope all the same. I thought about all the things I wish I'd done differently. I wish I'd asked Nancy to prom, even if she'd said no. At least I would have known I had the guts to try. I wish I'd finished college, found a job I cared about instead of settling for one that just paid the bills. I wish I'd opened up to the women who showed interest over the years, instead of pushing them away because I was scared. But maybe it wasn't too late. Maybe this small act of kindness, returning a lost bracelet, could be the first step towards the life I'd always wanted but never had the courage to go after. Or maybe Sarah could be the start of a new chapter in my boring life. As I turned onto Sycamore Lane, I finally passed a point of no return. The street was quiet, lined with normal-looking houses. I found number 1742 easily, a narrow brick building with a small porch. The windows were dark. Of course they were, I realized. It was nearly 9 p.m. A bit late for anyone to drop by. What was I thinking then again? The walk took longer than I thought it would. I was about to turn away to come back at a better time when something stopped me. The front door to 1742 was open a little bit, just slightly, barely noticeable, but definitely open. I felt butterflies in my stomach. Something wasn't right. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the doorbell. Should I ring it? Call out? What if she was in trouble? It's not normal to leave one's door open. What if there was someone else in there? A burglar? I should call the police. But what would I tell them? That I, a stranger, was hanging around outside a young woman's house in the middle of the night? Or I could decide. My body made the choice for me. I pushed the door open gently, stepping into the dark hallway. Hello? I called out softly. Hello, Miss Sarah? It's Andre, the dishwasher from Mario's restaurant you frequent. I found your bracelet in the dishes. I am just returning it. Silence. The house was still, the air heavy with the quiet that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I took another step forward, my eyes adjusting to the darkness. A soft light came from a nearby room, the living room, I guessed. Miss Sarah? I called again, louder this time. I'm sorry for coming in. Are you okay? Your door was open. I just wanted to give back your bracelet. I moved towards the light, my heart pounding in my chest. As I stepped into the living room, I froze. Sarah was there, sitting in a chair but surrounded by what seemed to be darkness. My eyes adjusted to the dark. It was her. She was staring straight ahead, not moving. For a moment I thought she hadn't heard me, but then her eyes moved to mine and I saw nothing. No surprise, no fear, no anger, just emptiness. I found your bracelet, I stammered, pulling it from my pocket at the restaurant. I didn't want to leave it in lost and found. I was afraid someone might steal it. Sarah didn't answer. She didn't even blink. She just stared at me with those empty eyes, and I felt cold all over. Something was very, very wrong here. I took a step closer, holding out the bracelet. Here, I said quietly, it's yours. Your name and address was inscribed on it. Slowly, very slowly, Sarah's eyes moved to the bracelet. She looked at it for a long time, then back at me. When she spoke, her voice was low and scratchy, like she hadn't used it in days. "Thank you," she said, barely above a whisper, "but you need to leave now, before they arrive." "Before who arrives?" I asked, confused and worried. "Sarah, are you okay? Do you need help?" I don't know what came over me at that moment. Maybe it was seeing eyes as dead as my own had been for years. Maybe it was the desperate need to do something, anything, to feel like I mattered. Whatever it was, I found myself kneeling beside her chair, the bracelet forgotten in my hand. Then I saw it. The scars on her wrists. Those told me all what I needed to know about this soul. "Sarah," I began, not sure what I was going to say, but knowing I had to say something. I know what that's like. To feel alone, to feel like nothing matters anymore." Sarah's eyes widened a little, the first real reaction I'd seen from her. I kept talking, the words coming out like a dam breaking. "I've spent my whole life being afraid to take chances, afraid to reach out, afraid to live. And now I'm 53 years old, and I've got nothing to show for it but a lifetime of regrets. It's okay to say goodbye to those regrets." I reached out, but she didn't move, but she wasn't rejecting me either. "Whatever you're going through, Sarah, you don't have to face it alone." For a long moment there was silence. Then, so quietly I almost missed it, something flickered across her face. Pain? Fear? So quickly I almost missed it. "I'm okay now. Thank you for bringing this back. Thank you for sharing with me your pain. It's time to let go of that." "It's time to let go," Sarah repeated herself. "Thank you. And you should go now. They'll be here soon." Before I could ask who they were, there was a loud knocking on the front door. "They're here," she whispered without emotion. Confused and more than a little scared, I stood up. I walked to the front door, my heart pounding. As I reached for the handle, the knocking came again, louder this time. "Police!" "Open up!" My blood ran cold. Police. Of course. What was I thinking, coming into a young woman's house late at night? I'm a stranger, an intruder. This looked bad. This looked very, very bad. I opened the door right away. I knew I could explain. 2 police officers stood there, their hands on their guns. Behind them, I could see the flashing lights of a police car. "Hands where we can see them," one of the officers shouted. I put my hands up right away. "Officers, I can explain," I started, but they cut me off. "Turn around slowly and put your hands behind your back," the other officer ordered. As they put handcuffs on me, my mind was racing. Did a neighbor see me leave and call the police? Was this a crime scene I entered? Or a scary thought hit me. Had Sarah called them earlier? They led me back into the living room, telling me my rights as we went, but Sarah wasn't there. The chair where she was sitting was empty. "Where is she?" one of the officers demanded. "Where's Sarah?" I don't know," I stammered. "She was just here, in that chair. We were talking." The officers looked at each other in a way I didn't understand. One of them spoke into his radio, calling for backup. The other started searching the house, calling out Sarah's name. I stood there, handcuffed and confused, as more police arrived. They were treating the house like a crime scene, I realized with horror. What had I walked into? And then suddenly there was a commotion from upstairs. Raised voices, the sound of radios. A detective I hadn't noticed before came into the room, looking grim. "Take the cuffs off him," he ordered, nodding at me. "But, sir," one of the officers started to argue. "Do it," the detective snapped. As the cuffs were taken off, I rubbed my wrists, feeling relieved but still confused. "What's going on?" I asked. "Where's Sarah?" The detective looked at me for a long moment, his face unreadable. Finally, he sighed. "Come with me," he said. "There's something you need to see." It seemed to last forever, but I stood there at the doorway to Sarah's bedroom. The woman in the bed must have been 95 years old. I couldn't believe my eyes. The detective told me Sarah was a shut-in with a long cognitive decline. She always talked about visiting the restaurant and asking about her lost bracelet. The detective mentioned it looks as if she has been dead for weeks and the door must have opened over not being closed properly. The police knew I had nothing to do with this. They told me I was free to go, but they might want to talk to me some more if anything came up. The other officers stood in the bedroom around Sarah and took their hats off in respect. A few officers told me they knew of her growing up. One officer, a young man, told me that his grandfather at one time was pursuing her hand in marriage, but Sarah kept turning him down. Finally, his grandfather met someone else and became happily married. The officer then told me this broke Sarah's heart, and she always enjoyed being pursued. The officer would periodically visit her to see how she was doing as she was getting up in her years. She gave him advice: never regret, always look forward, and don't always say no, because one day no one will be around when you say yes. I then asked, what did the officer do? He laughed, showed me his finger with a wedding band, and said, the first woman I met after that, I married her. She was actually ticketing my car. There was a chuckle around the room, then once again, silence. The paramedics came in with the stretcher, and I knew it was my time now to go and let them do their work. So I left. Still, this did not answer the question, why was I talking to Sarah in the living room? The rain began to pour, as it always did. I found myself walking home instead of holding my head down as to not get wet. I looked up and felt the cool drops washing itself over my face. And for that moment, I felt young again, and that's my story.